I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting of August 27th, 2024 at 6:30. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Brad or Tim?
Let's do it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. I always call on the right people to start this, apparently. Before we start, I'd like to welcome to their very first board meeting ever, Kate Sonnenday and Tommy Almond, our student representatives. Now, they were introduced before, but this is your first official meeting, so welcome to the team, folks. And I have a really cute picture of them holding their signs. It's great. At least I think it's pretty cute. Public comment, Betty Yonke, do we have anything? Seeing as there's no public comment, we will move on to my response to previous public comment. I have no response to previous public comment today. Moving on to the revisions or approval of the agenda, items can be added or deleted from the meeting agenda, and or the order of items may be changed. Oh, pardon me, before we go on, I do have one slight note. I just heard thunder in the background, and I wanted to say this following statement. If the YouTube stream signal freezes, it's likely that we have lost the internet, but Ben Goodman will record the meeting. If we lose power, we will make a determination about continuing with the meeting. You had a quick question? Oh, and we also have one absence this evening. Steve Lotch will not be with us this evening, but the rest of the board is here and we can continue. We have a quorum. So back to the approval of the agenda. I really did want to get that out of the way before we lost power, and you see I almost didn't make it. In fact, I didn't make it. The agendas must be approved before proceeding further. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion, Gerby.
Gerby.
Support Step.
Oh,
go ahead, Susan. That's fine.
Oh, support E-Step.
E-Step supports. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, we have an agenda. Let me just write this down. We have one action item this evening. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the change order for additional funding as recommended by Clark Construction Company for additional work to the trade contractor T&M Asphalt in the amount of $218,911 as submitted by Rex Clary, Executive Director of Operations. The board, please note, had originally approved the amount of $555,555 as part of bid package 1 on December 12th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Miller.
Miller. Do we have support?
Support Steppen.
Thank you. Rex, or first of all, are there any questions? Oh, he just shimmered right to the front of the room. Did you have anything to add to this and why it's coming about?
Yes. So this is twofold. The scope at Harvest grew. For one, we added additional square footage, and then after we milled it, they realized that they could not save the asphalt. The asphalt we were going to put on top was going to last at most 3 to 5 years, which would have been a 6-figure waste of money. And so they went all the way down to the base, did some undercuts, filled it back in, and then they repaved on top of that another 2 to 3 inches on top of that. So this should last another probably 12 to 15 years is what the goal is with this. And twofold, do you have a question?
I did. Just to remind us all, this is the parking lot for the buses at Harvest?
This is...
Oh, Harvest. No, I'm sorry. It's the I was at Heritage, sorry. The other lot, which is the...
It's the west lot. No, this is the west lot. So we were just going to mill the west lot, which is the parent park, staff park, walk-in. And the buses come up. We were going to do the heavy on the bus part, which is very, very small in nature, I guess, in square footage. So when we took the mill on the parent parking side, which I did not feel was acceptable to me, it just did not perform well when they did the milling. It was falling apart. It was just not going to be a long-lasting repair, and it was still going to be well into 6 figures, so we needed to do it right. The second part is the Harvest parking lot is separate from the playgrounds, so we're using Safe, Warm, and Dry bond 2015 for this project, and we're using the new bond for the playgrounds. And the new bond for the playgrounds had contingency in it. We did not put any in the old bond, okay? So we need to move, we roughly have $170,000 left in the contingency fund for the playgrounds. We're asking for 200 and, I forget the number, 218,911 to come out of the safe, warm, and dry to stay with that project per Miranda's request as an accounting piece that she has to do. We just can't move that money over. That money will come back to the district. We're wrapping up this project now. We'll be doing closeout. Majority of that money is going to come back to the district. So there is additional need at Harvest, but the accounting piece is to come out from the safe, warm, and dry. Did I explain that right?
So does that wipe out that contingency money? There's no more contingency money now?
Correct. Correct. As we wrap this up. Well, you're approving this tonight, and then we'll wrap that project up, but we're 95% almost done. I'd say almost closer to 98%, and this Friday will be a hard work day, and Saturday will be a hard work day, and we hope to be at 99% by September 7th. We won't probably have grass in some of the playgrounds yet, but we're going to be pretty much done with construction.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Tim?
Yeah.
Tim and Brad?
Yeah, I just kind of want to mention, I know the answer, but I mentioned to you, I bring it up so that the rest of the community can know too. When you see a $220,000 change order come through, you wonder how did that come about? But you have unit pricing in there too, so that protects the school from the contractor just bidding at whatever he wants to when you have a change.
Yeah, he had to carry the same, what he bid on the milling of the bus pathway, he had to carry that same percentage as far as cost into that same parking lot as we expanded our scope, so.
So when you say contingency on this, does that mean that this still fits within the budgeted parameters of this particular project?
We bid both projects together so we could get better pricing, unit pricing on all the asphalt work, not just the parking lot and the playgrounds. That's why we brought the playgrounds with this. So as we did all that, so we have $170,000 left in that contingency. So it is an add of roughly $48,000. Correct. Correct. Correct.
And how abnormal is this?
Abnormal, we normally do not, but our scope grew so much with this project. Like I said, when it failed, we had to pivot and do something. We couldn't just leave it the way it was, and it didn't make sense just to cover it up. It would have been something we would have been going back to probably in this bond, if not the next bond.
And I appreciate your diligence and your long-term thinking on it. I just wanted to know how we were buttoned up on those fronts. So thank you.
Yep.
Jennifer Stebbin?
Hey Rex, just quickly, can you talk about the safety and kind of the user experience flow for the kids and the parents, and if this is affecting anything or if we're doing good at Harvest as far as being back to school?
So I was there on Monday. It was all positive from parents and students. We've added real ballards to protect the students on the central plaza now. Those were just light poles in the past, aluminum light poles. So we've added those ballards to protect if anybody does come through there, which we hope never ever will happen. The flow looks good. We didn't have the backup. We've got more queuing now on campus, so we can stack more cars without backing onto the roundabout. On the parent side, the buses now are separate from the parents. And so before, we'd have parents, students cutting between the buses, which is very unsafe. We used to have that problem at Heritage. We solved it there, Woodland the same. So now the buses come in the keyhole, the front loop, and they do the loop, and the parents have their own curb. They have two curbs now, two drop-off areas. So I think it's gonna be a win-win. It's just a change. But the kids are safer. The staff has more parking closer to the building. And then we've improved the ADA accessibility from high school to Harvest now. Before, you couldn't get down the ramp on the high school side. You could always get up the hill on the Harvest side. Now we've included that, and now you can get down the ramp from the high school parking lot to Harvest on those big event days. So it should be a win all the way around. We've not heard anything from the staff. Emily's doing a great job. She lets me know when we don't do well, so.
Great. Well, it sounds like we'll be ready in time for homecoming parade,
Yeah. Well,
which is where a lot of folks
we got a
park
big
up there.
game on Wednesday night, and then we're on the road, I think, for 4 weeks straight. So we're gonna clean everything up, make sure we get ready for that Hall of Fame and I think homecoming the next
Something
weekend,
like
or
that,
something, vice versa.
Well, thank you, Rex, I appreciate that. So
Yep.
all in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much. 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. We have one scheduled report this evening from our very own Kara Davis, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Thank you, Kara.
All right. Good evening, board and community. I hope everybody and our new student reps, welcome. I hope everybody has had a wonderful start to the 24-25 school year. And looking forward to sharing our summary of our annual district quality report with you this evening. As a reminder, these are highlights. This report is over 200 pages, so I think we're at 203 this particular year. I think last year was 213. So I've just popped out a couple of pieces of information for you as related to our district strategic frames. And I'm going to go ahead and get started because Michael has set quite the tempo this evening. So with that, our quality survey is something that we have given in the last we've given it for across a decade at this point in time, but for the last 3 years, we've worked really hard to try to give approximately the same survey so that we can really compare results year over year, which has been incredibly helpful. We partner with a company called K-12 Insight. Our representative is Dr. Amy Bull. She works very closely with us to design this survey, to continue to calibrate it across time, and then of course to share the results with us in a way that we can understand them. So she's actually walked through these results with us as a core administrative team, and then I break down the results for our staff so that they have access to them first as our building administrators and directors, and then to our teacher leaders and to our staff at large. So I'm happy to be sharing these with you this evening. Something to note is that one of our goals last year was to increase student participation. We certainly did that. You can see quite the increase there from 21-22 to 23-24. So we had to recalibrate how we were giving this survey to ensure that all students had access, that it was given at a consistent time, and that we were really intentional about the when during the window of the survey that students would be taking it. So we had approximately 1,300 secondary students from grades 6 through 12 take it, and 734 elementary students 3rd through 5th grade take it. Notably, in the top right-hand corner, in terms of parents and guardians, we had 598 total responses this year, which is technically down from 21-22, but there are some things going on there, so I included the percentages for you. So you can see that we did not send out as many surveys this year, so if you're looking closely at that in terms of the number of invitations delivered, a couple of things have happened over the last couple of years, one of which was that the IT team was cleaning up Power School. In terms of who was listed as a guardian, a parent or guardian, in order to not have non-custodial or non-guardian parents listed as well. So we had some grandparents on there, some friends of families and things, so that was a work in progress. While I haven't spoken to Jay directly about this, that's one of my hunches there. Additionally, this past year, we also piloted a spot check survey through K-12 Insight. We started giving that spot check to a random 200 people, starting in December all the way through April. And I do recall in April, I made Dr. Bull turn it off. I said, like, they're not going to answer our regular annual survey because we're using this pilot survey and sending that out. So you may have been a part of that. We had good results from that survey. It's interesting to compare the pilot survey results to the quality survey results, but that was happening right up until this. And frankly, I don't know that we did a great job saying, and this is our actual quality survey for families to complete. So those are some of my hunches around why that number 598 looks like that and is down from the previous years. It's actually consistent percentage-wise with 22-23, but down from 21-22. All right, and just as a quick reminder, something that's not overly apparent when I run through these results, just for the sake of folks watching, and if you do look at it, the full report after the fact, is the degree of I don't knows do influence the results. And so I made a move this year to indicate that if it was a 15% higher I don't know, in terms of answering the question, then I added this gray triangle to the results. So when you see the graphs, you'll know that there's a significant degree of I don't know, which is neither good nor bad necessarily from a positive influence, negative influence. I think it's informative in terms of us making sure that we're communicating the information and gathering the results, but there is that piece that I wanted to make you aware of. All right, so the last 3 years, the district has spent a number of hours working with staff to really think about database decision-making. This will not be the first time you hear me say this year, because it'll come back in my report in September related to our state assessment results. But as always, I encourage folks who are looking at large sets of data like this to consider norms, specifically from our Bridge to Civility. When we think about data, it can get really, when we think about emotions, like looking for those areas to celebrate. And then, of course, there's areas for opportunity and growth, too. The data sets that we have represent our entire organization, not just one department, not just one person, not just one role. Assume good intentions. Everybody is working towards improvement all the time. Certainly, there's continuing areas for us that we're striving to improve upon. Observing and reflect. It's wonderful to think about, as said, like where are the areas of celebration and then where are the areas of growth. And then anticipating unfinished business. So I always look through the lens of, okay, here's what we've accomplished and here's what our next steps are, so that we can honor the incredible work of our staff and continue to have our eyes on the future as well. So in order to create a just something that we can synthesize a little bit more quickly, the data is organized around the 4 strategic goals for the district. So I'm going to break those down one by one as we go through. The first one being developing adaptive learners in order to cultivate academic, professional, and life skills for current and future success. So when I think about our data as relates to that particular goal, it's really positive in terms of developing adaptive learners. Like you can see here, the positive perception of the quality of Saline education. And this is certainly a tribute to the hard work of our educators and our system as a whole. If 80% or more respondents indicate the quality of Saline area schools education as excellent or good, and our results outperform the national average. Similarly, you can see in terms of rigorous curriculum, there's high levels of marks for that, and holds up our standards for what we hope our students are experienced curricularly in the system. This is only reported by secondary students, so it's great to see that our students, staff, and families all have a similar general agreement about the quality of our classes and the courses offered. We also are looking at our compass skills in terms of our SAS graduate profile. So our hope is always to think about not just the academics, but also about the skills of the future that students might need, and we capture those in our compass and through our student attributes. So the survey has delineated questions from our compass and asked about our students' performance in this area. So generally speaking, you can see that there's agreement that our students can demonstrate some of the student attributes that are outlined in our compass. And that carries on through these next set of student attributes, with the exception of financial literacy. And this is something that's been trending for the last few years, and we have our eyes on that. We've made some improvements in this area and some things that have been added. We added financial algebra last year. We started we teased out the different curricular areas that would be covering financial literacy last year. I would say that's going to come into its full version this coming year, since we've worked through those curriculum maps with the teachers who are teaching at the high school. We're starting our social studies curriculum review this year, and where we're going to be discussing how junior achievement fits in. That's been a really popular program that we aren't necessarily leveraging all the way across the grade levels. So that might be something we consider scaling in order for every student to have it. And there's also a high degree of I don't know from both the families and the students as to whether or not we're teaching that. But one of the things that you might see throughout here is that there's what we call it a perception gap between the staff and the students and the families. Obviously, the staff have a much more intimate understanding of what's happening directly in the schools day to day. But even the staff in this particular response don't necessarily feel like students demonstrate financial literacy. So that would be an area that we're going to continue to interrogate and work on growing as a district so that our students have that skill. And then just anecdotally, I was interested that the students only 75% of the students felt like they were digitally literate. So I thought, okay, we're gonna keep working on that, because how do we define that and make that be something that they understand? Because those other ones, if it doesn't have that gray square, we're influenced by an I don't know for that. Strategic frame number 2 has to do with strong partnerships with both families and the community in order to have a positive culture or environment for our students and enhance their extracurricular activities and their academics. You can see a lot of gray squares on this page, and this has been true for the last couple of years now. So we are well aware of the need to continue to work on our communication as relates to what's available for our students in terms of partnerships with our families and our community partnerships. And This is something that we have been paying attention to in terms of communication. The effectiveness of communication has been something that's on our minds. This actually came up in the Wellness Committee. The Wellness Committee did, and you heard from Musetta Deneen in, I believe, June, might have been July, from the Wellness Committee report, just talking about like how do families get information about the opportunities that are available for their students, specifically as related to SEL, and in such a way that they can absorb it. And one of the things that we've heard is that we over-communicate. There is a lot of information out there from Saline area schools, and so how do we make it be in such a way that families can get their hands on it in a way that's accessible for them, for the way they communicate, for the way they receive information well. So that's something that is still on our minds and we'll continue to focus on. Additionally, we're going to continue the District Family Partnership Series this year. That was something we launched last year in an effort to improve this particular set of survey results and to provide a better service to our family. So Jackie and I are working on the month-by-month overview for that. Our hope is that consistently offering something every year will start to increase our participation rate and help families know that it is available and that they can rely upon it. You can see here this has to do with more of a direct partnership with teachers to families themselves. I would add this is another area for growth. While the numbers are high, and I don't want us to be like we tend to get pretty high numbers, north of 70, 75% and whatnot. But I did recognize the need for us to think about how we're communicating directly with families regarding academic support and materials that might help in the home front for families. So families are replying that they feel like they're not necessarily getting that direct communication from teachers. There seems to be a correlation to the age of the student, that communication seems to decrease as the student gets older. And those are things that I think we need to talk more about as a district, and how do we do that so families feel like they have the information that they need to best support their student at the time that they need it. From a sense of being welcoming and to our families and our volunteers, there's a high degree of agreement that our schools are welcoming from the families, students, and staff. So the school is welcoming to all families, and staff members and families treat each other with respect, and that the school promotes opportunities for families to volunteer. And finally, this idea about families having opportunities to be involved. So you see similar results regarding the opportunities, positive perception of opportunities for families to be involved, whether it be in extracurricular activities or as a part of improving the schools or being part of advisory committees. And of note, we are going to relaunch the Strategic Council this year to revisit our strategic frames. Our strategic goals were set in 2000. They were affirmed in 2020-21, and we are going to revisit them because of they were started in 2018-19. So as a part of our strategic planning this year, in October, we're going to be revisiting that process again as aligned to our compass, which is now essentially a decade old. And it's amazing how fast that happens. So those are the kinds of opportunities where families really can have an opportunity to participate and weigh in, similar to our committees that are available. We have CAB, SEAC, there's a lot of acronyms for our committees. The Wellness Committee, DIAC, and I'm missing one, sorry. SACSED, yes, Wellness, DIAC.
Special education.
Special education, yeah, so I'll get y'all. But there is on our website, if you're watching and you are interested, there's a list under committees and ways to get involved that you can find. We'd be happy to give you that information. And then our strategic council, we ran a small strategic council last year on a focus group around fiscal responsibility. We had quite a few participants. I want to say there was 25. That was really successful. So we're looking forward to digging back into that again this year. Strategic frame number 3 has to do with enhancing a positive school environment and creating that sense of positive morale for staffs and students. And here you can see that the staff have a high degree of agreement in these particular areas in terms of students having staff members to go to for a school problem. So that seems to be an agreement across all of the 3 groups that responded. Different when you get to personal problem, and that is something that's been something that we've seen for the last few years. When I've pondered this, obviously you can see there's what we would call a perception gap between staff and families and students in that. And then the question becomes like, they can come with a school problem. Can they go with a personal problem? I wonder how we define personal problem. We do not define anything in the survey itself for the students. However, just being aware that we want all students to have a trusted adult. We have added a question about trusted adults into the survey, whether or not they have one. And we obviously know that trusted adults don't have to necessarily be within the educational environment. Another layer that we've added is, of course, we have an advisory opportunity in every grade level, whether that's in the form of a morning meeting or middle school advisory or Hornet time. There's opportunities for students to connect with adults in positive ways that are above and beyond academics. And then these pieces you can see with a high degree of I don't know. It's very correlated to the other data that I put out related to the partnerships. It's this idea of whether or not our respondents are aware that the school is doing so much around teaching into mental health, personal health, well-being, stress and anxiety management, and all of that. So it's a high degree of agreement, and there's a high degree of I don't know there. So something that I have seen shifting is us trying to be as clear and transparent as possible about the opportunities that are available during the school day. For example, the high school administrative team is putting out the Hornet Time curriculum in their weekly newsletter, so parents are able to see that. In addition, Dr. Lodge is including in his community newsletters some question prompts for families to ask their students that might be helpful in getting that conversation going about what's happening in school. And then, of course, we'll have that family partnership series again, where we'll be providing some supports and then better understanding of connections of what's happening in the schools related to these particular areas. All right. And this, in terms of the culture of the school, there's much more perception gap in this in some areas of I don't know. So in terms of the schools being treated, or the students being treated fairly regardless of their background. So you can see that staff in the first three really feel like they are treated with fairness regardless of their background and lifestyle, that we don't tolerate bullying, and that staff members are responsive. It's interesting to see, and it's not necessarily in those first two an agreement, but there is a high, the last two, there's a high degree of I don't know. But in those first two, there really isn't. So that perception gap between the staff and then the families and the students is definitely worth us continuing to interrogate. And these are things that we've been talking about for a couple of years. And so some of the moves that we've made related to this is continuing to grow our clear and transparent expectations and making sure students are aware of those through grade level meetings, which are happening this week, through organizing our handbooks in such a way that there's more consistency across the grade levels, looking at the language between grade levels and buildings to ensure that there's some consistencies there. Because I know that we as a district believe that this is happening, and we want our students and families to also feel that as well. Sense of safety is high degree in terms of, I've just included that in there because this is pretty broad in terms of goal number 3. So thinking about our schools being safe and school and community being aware of these procedures, high degree there. And then staff members treating students with respect is high for all 3 groups. And then you start to see somewhat of a decline with students treating staff members with respect, and then students treating each other with respect. Similar to having really clear, transparent, visible expectations for students and having community meetings and talking through our expectations and working on behavioral norms. This is something that we've continued to work on in the last few years, and we'll continue to reinforce. And the work is in progress. Strategic frame number 4 is essentially about maintaining district fiscal responsibility and strong operations. Some data points related to that. You can see positive perceptions of the basic operational components related to a school district. So whether it's the school buildings, technology resources, transportation, supporting students, a high degree of agreement that it is strong. And then in terms of Dr. Lodge's decisions, you can see some representative categories there with him making courageous decisions about district sustainability and then implementing a plan. The staff have a high degree of belief that Dr. Latch is doing these 3 things, and then you can see a high degree plus I don't know. And I will tell you in the I don't know here, I want to say it was between, I wrote it there because knew I wouldn't remember, 19 and 25% of not knowing. So in thinking about our communicating that plan out, knowing what the specific moves that we're making as a core team in order to maintain fiscal responsibility, make decisions for the future of the district in ways that our community can understand. As a part of this particular goal area, something that I know has been of interest in the past is whether or not we have our families returning to Saline area schools. So one area that the survey has been checking in on for the last few years is what's called a Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score is essentially like, would you tell your friends, relatives, neighbors to come to Saline area schools? So that is abbreviated by NPS. And in general, that 28 score is essentially, it's the 50 minus, it's the promoters versus minus the detractors. So in this particular case, parents and guardians Net Promoter Score is a 28. That is on par with national benchmark in terms of families promoting their schools. And then you can see a much higher degree, kind of off the charts, Dr. Bull would say, for our staff promoting our schools. Reasons for promoting our schools are outlined here. So if you are promoting Saline area schools, the question was why? And you can see that there's a lot of consistency with the previous charts in terms of academic programming, opportunities for extracurriculars, customer service, the access. So there is a higher degree of staff agreement within these different categories, but still overall, I think this reflects some of the wonderful opportunities we have here in Saline area schools. Another question that we ask is whether or not your student would re-enroll. We've been tracking that, and so 89% of the respondents, so there's 588 respondents, that's what the N equals, and 89% of those said yes, that they would be returning, and then 4% said no, and 8% were unsure. In the big scope of this, I think that's about 55 people. Don't quote me on my math on that standing here after our first 2 days of school, but I think that's approximately sort of where we're at with that. And then asking the question of why would you be leaving? So these are they were able to pick any one of these, more than one, or none. And so respondents, I think there were 56. Okay, 56 folks decided to select why they would not come back to a school here. And you can see on this graph that the highest one was seeking improved academics. And that's certainly something as the district executive director of teaching and learning I'm grappling with, because the very first slide was our excellent academics. So there's some disconnect between some of these data points that we have that I think are worth us continuing to explore, ask questions about, talk to our stakeholders and better understand, and continue to work on. So as a part of our continuous improvement plan, just really as a reminder to you as the board and to the community, Saline area schools is oriented around the Michigan continuous improvement process, and we are staying the course with our desire to ensure that we are connecting our stakeholders so that we are creating independent and aligned processes and working toward a common goal to bring about the results that we've set out ahead of us. And that we follow a very strategic plan in order to revisit our goals, look at survey results, set a plan in motion, and then check in on that plan across the year as outlined here. And this is all supported by the state of Michigan. And our 2 goals, we set these in 2021-22 officially. We are going to maintain these this year. In our September report on the state assessments, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I did want you to know that we are moving forward with these 2 goals. Essentially, the first one is academic, about overall rates of mastery in the content areas, and then the second one is about strengthening social emotional support models. And the survey, the quality survey results, is one point of data that we use to monitor our efforts in these 2 goal areas. So you can see with that second one specifically, we have continued work to do, and especially as it comes to communicating out what we're doing to support students' social emotional health and wellness. Let's get that for today. And then you can't see it because it's really light blue, but the full report is linked here for you at the end. I did link up the very the new report that does not have the confidential watermark on it. I asked Dr. Bull to send that to me, and that is the one that we will post online for you. So with that, thank you so much for letting me walk you through some of the highlights of the quality survey.
Thank you very much, Kara Davis. So if the board has any immediate questions that can be answered fairly promptly, that's great. If not, I'm sure you will respond by email.
Absolutely.
Anyone on the board table wants to speak up? Starting with you, Lauren Gold.
On the NPS score, I wondered, is there a way to break down, and this isn't for right now, but just because I won't remember to email you tomorrow probably, the score differential between elementary parents and secondary parents?
Ooh, I actually will have to investigate that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's easily done, where you see when do people, like, I understand that we're meeting, like,
Yes.
we're at nation norms and doing well, but it'd be interesting to know if there's any statistically significant difference between people's willingness to promote the district. And does that meet norms, like, in general, nationally? Are people less happy as their kids progress through school because it's hard to have teenagers? Or is everybody more, you know, I have a bias, but I don't know if that's, like, rooted in data.
I will tell you that Dr. Bull, when she meets with us, has shared some of her insights, just having worked with so many hundreds of school districts, and that the tendency of secondary students to be a little more negative, and potentially that's related. She hasn't said that particularly, but she has mentioned secondary students do seem to be harder across the board. And so we see lower percentages typically across the nation. I did cross-check this. I will look up that for you to see, because we do have these reports are all able to be delineated by school, and they're provided to each principal by their individual school report. I did check the pilot number. What was really interesting to me was in March, right before we gave this survey, the net promoter score was approximately 20 points higher. So there is a disconnect between the random sampling of people and then the people who took this in April or May. And I was just curious to know why. Like, I didn't find that until today, so that's a question I'll also ask Dr. Bull.
Yeah, there's some statistical term for that when people who are seeking to take a survey are skewed. It's either negative impression or a positive impression bias. But I wondered if you collect data as to demographics of non-returners. In other words, do we have demographic data regarding like race, grade of school, like any kind of demographic in that way as to people who are non-returning? Do we see any demographic patterns? And then specifically, if there was any way for next time to dig into what people mean when they say they're leaving for academic, like improved academics, do we know where they're leaving for? Like, what are they leaving for private school with smaller class sizes, in which case you can't compete as a public school or as a different district? Do we have any way to collect that data?
So this particular survey, because it's anonymous, does not collect that data. I would have to go in, because I can see some of the subgroups for some of the questions, which is an interesting, more narrow look, and it helps me understand some of the things a little bit more. I know that Dr. Latch will be giving an enrollment report at some point in time. The numbers that we have, for example, I did reach out to Mandy Rucky and ask, like, is this panning out? Is this number? And it doesn't appear that it is. So the report of that many not returning isn't what I'm seeing in Power School right now, but we also have 2 weeks and/or report of records before we finalize Power School. So the numbers that I'm looking at don't necessarily reflect today's, but in Steve's report, I will mention that might be a point of interest for us to examine. You're welcome.
Brad?
I have a couple of comments, and then I do have a couple of questions. If you want to write them down, that's fine with me, and get back to me. So the first thing is, I want to appreciate the vast amount of data that is here, right? This is important data. It's massive. There's a lot to digest here, and even for me, this is a lot here. I want to thank families and parents and participants who did this survey.
Thank you.
I myself
appreciate
took
that.
it, and it's not short. So the reality is that if you took this survey, you really did, kind of get into it for 10 minutes or so with us about things. And we appreciate you taking that time because it does drive our improvement, which is going to be my last question to you. And then one of the things that really excites me about this survey, as I look at the data, is the idea that I really do think that the data in general affirms the strength and the quality of our staff, right? Like it really affirms them. It really makes me feel confident about that and about the commitment they make. I know they're great. I know they're brilliant. I hear about it, but it's affirmed in the data by the individuals who are actually living there every day. So that's awesome to me. So current ninth graders, there was a question about financial literacy that you said had either an unknown component or just didn't pull as strongly as we would hope. Am I correct that the current ninth graders have a state requirement on their for graduation?
Yes.
How are we going to meet that requirement?
Yeah.
How are we doing that?
So we actually jumped in a year ahead. Of course, Saline Schools did that because we like to be ahead of the curve. So our math teachers, alongside of some of our CTE teachers, so we've got a senior strategy class, we have a business class, we have an accounting class, and now we have financial algebra, which you approved 2 years ago so that we could run it last year. So it ran for the first time last year. And those folks who are teaching those classes, essentially there's 4 opportunities for students to receive the financial literacy credit. The ones that I just named, those folks got together and looked at the curriculum in each of those classes, determined those resources, and really rolled that out more intentionally last year so that we were ready for this year's ninth graders who are required to have it on their transcript. And so far, so good. I mean, the reports back the students really like learning about financial literacy.
Yeah. So it's a multi-tiered type.
Yeah, it's
of thing. They can get
multi-tiered. So
through
there's
multiple
many
means.
pathways for
Okay.
them to get that credit.
Okay, which is probably good when kids have to take into mind graduation requirements and how do we meet also all the other credits that we require and some of that kind of
Yes,
stuff. So,
and
okay.
just so that you are aware, predominantly it's in 11th and 12th grade.
11th to 12th grade.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not going to be the 9th and 10th grade years.
So some of those students have not gotten to those courses yet,
Correct.
but will.
Correct.
So
before
it's
they graduate.
possible that data will, if we track it, we could
Yes,
see if there's some
yeah.
improvement, see if that requirement has had the teeth that we would hope it would.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I would want you to think about is the leader of the teaching and learning team is that I know that we're now going to digest this in professional development and teaching and learning conversations and all of that. Have you identified like a top 3 areas of focus or like a top areas where you're like, I think we should put our energy and because we can only do so, right? Put our energies into so much. Where would you say is like the 1, 2, 3 areas that are of greatest need to you?
Yeah, so we actually call those our shifts, and so I pull those notes up often. We built those 2 years ago, and we see this data in front of us alongside of our academic data and our MyKIP goals, and knowing that our hope is really that staff will feel confident and competent in the area of their curriculum and assessment. And so we've rolled out a number of pieces related to studying data, because a part of that is building the muscle with data, and then having the opportunities to revisit their curriculum maps. So that's one bucket. And then the other one is safety and security, that our staff feel really comfortable, confident, and competent in handling high-stress situations, whether behavioral or emergency. And the safety and security team has been working really hard on that. And you can see, a high degree of agreement in the safety and security of our buildings, and I can only imagine what that's going to look like this coming year because of some of the shifts that we've made whole district this year with the safety response protocols under Jackie, Rex, Jays, and many, many more other building administrators and staff representatives leadership. You're welcome.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
These reports are incredibly informative. I appreciate you, Kara.
It's a lot of information.
Like Lauren, I jumped to NPS, and so while 50% is the national average, we always strive for excellence, pursuit of excellence, right? So I would like to, and you don't have to do this now, but collaboratively amongst your team, and of course with Steve, it would be great to know what are the top 10 things you can do to affect that number more positively. Because I would love for everyone to be recommending the school district, of course. I also hit on the financial literacy part that really popped out at me as well. I think one of the reasons, at least for the CTE, why it's a little bit later is because I think intro to business is a requirement. So you have to take that in. If you don't get into it in freshman year, then it delays it. So I think we have a nice path for financial literacy
Mhm.
at the high school. I would also like to see it at the lower grades. I love your idea with JA. I
Yeah.
think it should be, and I know that's also due to people that can't find the time to volunteer. So cultivating a slightly larger audience to go into the schools and provide their excellent curriculum, I think is
Yeah,
a really,
absolutely.
really nice idea, because the kids love it. They love it, like the paper money and understanding how money can move throughout a community. It's really cute to see.
Incredible.
So very good idea. The other statistic that I really liked was safety, involvement, welcoming, a safe school, a welcoming environment, and 97%. That's a really, really good number. And the involvement numbers were really high, both from families and from staff and students. And I think one thing that we can continue to drill on is that partnership with the families, because the more that we do, and this is actually part of policy, that we partner with the families in a particular way, it can improve academics, it can lower behavioral issues, it can promote safety and well-being. And so I think we're on a right path, and doing those family series are a really, really good idea.
Thank you.
So those were really good numbers, and I know a lot of times we drill into and I started with the NPS, how can we improve this? Like, and I don't mean to sandwich the compliment, but I think it's really important that so many of those numbers were really positive, and sometimes it's important to drill down on your opportunities for improvement, but it's also really nice to double up on our opportunities that we have strength in.
Absolutely.
So not just teaching to deficit, but teaching to excellence as well, and reinforcing that. So thank you very much. But yeah, top 10 ideas for a Net Promoter Score would be great.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, VP Stebbins. Secretary Miller.
Just a couple of things. The first thing, in looking at the non-promoter score and the students returning, that's of course one of the areas that we're looking at. But I do think that it's interesting. You mentioned that Mandy Recke, who's in charge of enrollment, and looking at the number of respondents to the survey and how it seemed like you were saying it was inflated compared to the actual number of non-returners. So that is interesting to me. And so I wonder if there's another way to acquire data. And I don't remember the answer to this question, but is there an exit survey for families who are not returning?
So we did. I didn't want to speak to that because I haven't asked Mandy if she's still asking that question, because we're incorporating some of that here.
That's fine.
So I will get that answer for you.
I just wondered if there was, since the data doesn't seem to align with the current picture of reality, I wondered if there was another way of finding, digging deeper into that. So
Yeah,
that's just a
absolutely.
question. And then I think too, for me, when I'm thinking about potentially reasons why people might not be returning, I want to acknowledge that while we strive to offer the best in terms of public education, that there are, legitimate reasons for people to seek other opportunities. I know I have family friends this year for a variety of reasons that online high school was the best fit for one of their students, or I know some of our students are attending programs like Y High that just offer it's a different model than what we have to offer. I think also, people who are seeking religious education, I think it's great that they have that opportunity, and that's different than what we offer here. So I think sometimes reasons that people might not be returning might not necessarily be negative. It's different than the model we offer, and that's okay. It's great that people have choices and can choose what best fits the needs of their individual students. Although we'd like, for this to be a good fit for everyone, the reality is that it's a public school, so there are some things we can't do. So not always negative, I guess, is what I wanted to land on there. The other thing that I was just going to mention in terms of financial literacy and that endorsement, just as, I guess, a little plug for that, my two recent graduates did take financial literacy courses. One of them took the course called Financial Literacy for Life. And I just wanted to say what an impact that has had on them. One of my children in the midst of that course was making a decision on whether to attend an in-state or out-of-state private school. And
it had been something that we had been discussing, and I felt like we were talking about Monopoly dollars in that student's head, and the reality of the end result and the amount of the difference in debt that could potentially be there just wasn't resonating. And in that class, it resonated, and a decision was made very quickly and happily. And it wasn't one that we had to force, but it was one that made so much sense to them. And so it was like, for me, that light bulb moment where the two of them really saw not just what's happening right now and not just their wants, but also long-term financial stability. So my husband and I were both extremely thankful for that class and the thinking that helped them to make that big decision, amongst others. They met before they went to school with a financial advisor for investing, and the questions that they were asking the financial person that we met with was astounded. They knew the different kinds of investments and how they mature and how soon they could use them and all of those things. So just really, really impressed with the level of knowledge that they gained from that class. And I am excited to see how that impacts our students as they move forward in high school, as that becomes a state requirement. Yeah, where every student has an opportunity to access.
Yes.
I'll be sure to pass it along to the teachers. They'll be very
Yes.
happy to hear that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we
It's a
could
great
go
project.
on. It was amazing. And then lastly, I just wonder, because we do have our student representatives, and it is their first meeting, so I don't want to put them on the spot, but there is a number. Yeah, there's a
Stay
number
out
of
our heads.
Sorry. There is a number of data here that definitely reflects, differences in parent perspective or caregiver perspective, parent guardian perspective, and staff perspective. It is, to me, just as like a general observation, I think that it is, I don't know, I think that I'm extremely happy to see the high numbers coming from our staff who are intimately involved in the day to day. And I think that's also reflected in the number of staff who choose to bring their kids to school too. So, and some don't, again, for a variety of reasons that are also legitimate. But I think that is a really positive thing, but just seeing the differences there. But overall, there is a distinct difference between how parents, the grown-ups, I guess, are answering, and students. So I wondered if there was any insight.
Call them the adults.
Yes. If our students had any response, and again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'd love to hear from you.
I was going to interrupt Susan for a moment.
okay.
And just before you go, sorry.
Oh, you said Susan, sorry.
That's
I think
because
after me
that's
before
because I
she
meant
gets to you.
Susan.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to interrupt you before you spoke to put our student reps on.
He was going to let me finish and then
Just to
jump the
prepare you in
students. Yeah.
advance, so if you
It was
have something to
confusing.
say by the time we
Yeah.
get to you. Ordinarily, we would ask you either at the beginning or the end. We don't, but if you have any comments or thoughts on this, deep thoughts, or
Yeah.
at any times, of course. So now we'll get back to the regular flow here.
It's a soft entry
The
point. I'm
reason
very
we're doing
friendly.
it this way is also to accommodate Ben Goodman, who swings the camera slowly across the room. It's easier for him. So we'll go to Trustee Eastep now. Assuming you have something to say or a question.
Yeah, you interrupted me before I even spoke.
Pre-interrupted.
Okay, so thank you for this information. I like how you attached it with the strategic plan and pulled from that. I know there's so much data that's kind of like the perception and equity survey. We only got like one, maybe two slides, and so there's so much in there. I was able to look through, what was it, 200, 300 pages? I didn't look through that much, but I kind of focused on, some areas. But, on the financial literacy, that I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you mentioned, but that there was a law passed in June 2022, and House Bill 5190, and it requires that there be a financial literacy course, and so the merit curriculum, like they're putting that in as requirements, and so I'm interested to see how those numbers will improve as, you know, that's being implemented. I agree, junior achievement, you know, I was able to teach that this year, and I was thinking, you know, I hope this continues with all of the available grades because it is totally valuable and applicable. So, yeah, let me see. So I have a couple of things. So when I was looking at, I picked a specific thing because not only was it, you know, comparison, it was like each section of, you know, how the parents responded, and then a section of how the students responded. But in addition to breaking it out in the 3 categories, it was broken out by the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see that improvement, or even, you know, the percentage staying like the same, right? Which is interesting because you're getting different numbers of, you know, people doing it.
Absolutely.
But
That's the trend data year over year, and
Yeah,
it's about page 170.
yeah. But, so I did pull the data specifically that, so students, staff, and parents, with the school does not tolerate bullying and or bullying-like behavior. And so I'll just give an example. In the past, the students had agreed 62%, and now it's 67. The staff, it was 83 in the past. Now it's 87% that they say that the school doesn't tolerate it. And then parents as well, in the past it was 59%, and that's went up 69%. The fact that we've started doing the bullying report, right, the past 2 years, I don't know if it came up there. Yeah, there was one slide there. You know, I think that shows improvement, as in when we're looking at tracking data and reporting that's, I don't know, I feel like, you know, it was similar in the 2 years and then has had a little increase, and I think that's, you know, related possibly, but, you know, I think like with the financial literacy, exciting to kind of see those connections and improvements. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
And can I interrupt, just because it seems to be a theme? I just appreciate you amplifying that, because I look at trend year over year data, and it gets really weedy really fast, and to see those incremental changes, our representative, Dr. Bowl, says when it's plus or minus 3%, it's considered significant. And so the fact that you did your, you know, deeper digging on that to present that here tonight, I really appreciate it. And to show that growth. So thanks.
That's good. So it is significant. That makes me even happy that you shared that. And so I had a question about it was the reasons why people were leaving. There was 2 different sections. There was primary, I think, and then there's all reasons. And then there was an area for other reasons. So I was curious, because on this, there's like, I guess maybe it's a question that, and I didn't look at the specific questions, but that you can choose multiple ones, right? And then is there a separate question that says primary?
Yes.
Okay.
This is it. Which is your primary reason? Sorry. So I misrepresented that when I was speaking, because there is one you can select all, and then the graph that I chose to put up here is your primary reason.
Okay.
Of the 55 people. So they had the opportunity, if they had selected they were unsure or were not returning, to answer why, and then they could select all, and then they could pick their primary.
Okay. And then the other reasons, do they write that down? Or
They do.
like, is that possible to get those, the data on those?
So those are the narrative responses, and I would have to work with Jackie to see about what that form might look like,
Okay.
and how we might approach that sensitively, because there is some personal information inside of some of those responses.
Yeah. Because, that would be, you know, interesting as well. And then there was mention a couple of times up here about this, getting more data from this. I believe in the past we've done exit surveys. I know that's something that you'll go back and ask about. But I know regularly the board and the community has asked for exit surveys on when students' families are leaving, and also with staff. So, maybe Superintendent Lodge can, address that more specifically. But I think it's something that the board cares about very much, and hopefully something, if we're not doing it now, that we will continue to amp that up. I had talked to someone who, a superintendent, I don't know if it was at a professional development, where a superintendent had actually called and reached out to the families. And I thought, whenever I thought exit survey, I thought, just a written survey or, typing it up. But, went that extra mile to just reach out to the family and say, hey, like, what what was it? What can I do better? Or, just to make that connection. And I thought that was an interesting approach. And then I think I don't have anything else. So thank you. This is great. I hope, we can break down that data somehow. That'd be helpful for like at the building level and how we especially set like strategic goals, when that starts back up.
Yeah, and I do anticipate bringing this data in a more digestible fashion to the strategic planning group that's going to start in the fall.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eastep and Trustee Austin.
Yeah, so I'll try to do this quick because a lot of things are already talked about. But so I'm glad you explained the number of deliveries and
Yeah.
those students because, with our some students leaving and, this has all come up many times. But that was alarming to me at first. And I was like, oh, man, this is not good. Because in the NPS, we're capturing only those that are still here, not that are leaving. And so, from a district standpoint, what does the NPS look like versus just the people coming to Saline look like? That might be different. So in those exit surveys, that would be, that would be helpful. Couple other things real quick, financial literacy, talking about that. Senior strategies is an awesome course. And I mean, if there's any way to move that down so other students can take that earlier as an elective, I think that would be a good idea. It goes over more than just economics. It goes over just life skills.
And we have been, sorry to interrupt, we have been exploring alongside of the high school administrative team and Kara Stemmer, director of SWWC, what a senior experience might look like in terms of a job, work-based or work site-based experience for students that might include some of those pieces related to resume building, developing a portfolio, learning communication skills, writing professional emails. I don't want to alarm anybody because it's really a pilot idea out there, and it's a bit nebulous right now, but it is something we're really interested in potentially implementing in the next couple of years, so that all of our students who exit Saline High School have had the opportunity that many students have through SWWC because it's required, and or if they take some of the classes that dial into that, like a senior strategies class.
Yeah, no, that's a great class, and I think all seniors should be taking that. And then, so the perception gap, like you'd mentioned, I think on slide 20, we hear that kind of in the community as well, and so I think that's something that we need to continue to work on. I did see on page 167 of the entire report, when I just kind of glossed through it real quick, there's page 167 talks about unfair treatment and different segments of that, and for the most part that stayed pretty steady, or some decline. The one socioeconomics was the one that seemed to really kind of feel like there's more of an unfair treatment, and so I'm just hoping that we can kind of look into that and kind of see what we can do differently for that to kind of bring that number back in line where it was in the past.
Yeah, and that is a very interesting graph if you're interested in diving deeper into that, is like in what categories do students, staff, and parents and guardians feel like students are being bullied and are harassed. We happen to also have the opportunity to look at it by subgroup reporting. So self-reporting within those subgroups is also really interesting. I'd be happy to put something together for you too, related to that.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could. So overall, appreciate it. A lot of information, and wow, you pulled out a lot of stuff, but there's still so much more. It's crazy.
Thank you, trustee. Indeed. Yeah. So students, I'll let you decide who wants to go first. If you have anything to say, any response to this onslaught of data, and no pressure.
I would just say I agree with like most of the statistics listed.
You gotta pull it towards you. There you go.
Yeah, I would say I agree with most of the statistics with most of them, and also we mentioned financial literacy a lot and like senior strategies, and I know people like 2 days into the class already that have learned a lot and enjoy
Good.
it, and I'm taking it later in the year and think it will help a lot for the future.
Great. Thanks, Kate.
I just have a couple questions about the financial literacy requirement. So that is a state requirement for classes, right? Is there going to be an opportunity, because that's going to be implemented in the student schedule, and something that, like for me, I was preparing my high school schedule like 7th and 8th grade, and I had a lot that I wanted to take. Like I'm in 2 APs this year. I was in 2 APs last year, and another 3 trimester class. And it was hard for me to fit all that in, and all the language credits, gym credits, health, and stuff like that. And I had to cut a lot from my schedule that I want to fit in, like exploratory SWWC classes. Just want to know, like, what if kids who have a more rigorous schedule, but aren't really sure like where they want to go, and are using this time in high school to kind of try out some of the opportunities Saline presents. Is there a way that we can accommodate that?
I think that one of the reasons why the counselors, the high school administrators, and then the teachers who are teaching these courses got together and collaborated on it to create these multiple pathways was just to speak to that particular pinch point for some students. And we started well ahead of the game. So it's the current 9th graders who are required to have this by the time they graduate. So we've got some room for growth there. But you can count some of these classes as either financial literacy or another course component that's required in graduation. And if you're taking some of those courses that incorporate some of the math and or the financial literacy, you might be able to capture your financial literacy credit in that manner, and that's approved by the state. So I think they were looking at all the different ways for students that could get it and still be in compliance with the law, and have opportunities to have the exploratory classes. I also think in the next few years, as students who are juniors and seniors are taking these classes, we'll find opportunities to tweak and improve upon it before the current 9th graders get to their 11th grade year. So we're also always striving to make improvements on it. So thank you for that feedback.
Okay. And I had one more question. What you mentioned about the counselors and advising people through those courses. Is that also something that's happening in the middle school too? Is there like word getting out that the incoming freshmen need to take a financial course? Because I was scheduling my schedule and I forgot about language, so I got to my senior year and I was like, oh shoot, I gotta take the languages. I had to cut a bunch of my schedule to fit in my requirements. So is that being like made sure that's addressed to like the middle schoolers so they can plan that in?
Yeah, so as a senior, you know that the counselors meet with each of you, do a course or a credit count, and they do that in small groups throughout from 9th grade on up. And then, of course, in 8th grade, the counselors actually go to the middle school and do presentations about what's required at high school, so they have the opportunity to plan, and then meet with them across the 4 years to do the credit counts and ensure that they're on the pathway to graduation with the most amount of experience and exploratory plus APs, what their hopes are for their postgraduate journey, while also hitting the mark for actually earning the diploma. So. Thank you.
And then I just want to say thank you. I'm in AP Stats right now, so I appreciate a lot of the work that was shown here.
Yay. I will look forward to your feedback on my use of statistics.
I could have
Thank you
used
so
your help
much.
this afternoon on an inter-rater reliability question I had. So I just want to say, first of all, to the whole board and our student reps, thank you. Great questions, I think. They
Yes,
went
they're great. Thank
a deep, diligent dig into the data. That's a lot of Ds. Thanks. And I wanted to say, and there are several instances where there seemed to be disconnects as I was looking for them, and you addressed every one, indicating that these are areas for future consideration. And I have a theory or two about the digital literacy disconnect, but I'll save that for a quiet meeting with you. It involves Chat GPT. But thank you so much, Kara Davis,
I
for your
like that. Thanks for
presentation.
illuminating that too. All right, thank you everybody so much, and safe travels home tonight.
Thank you. We have one brief discussion, discussion item, the Board Policy Committee update, which met this afternoon. Jenny Miller is the chair.
Yes, so we did meet tonight, and I'll just start by saying we did move a couple of items due to time, but also because we were going to give more time for some of the collection of ideas. So for example, hold on one second. So for example, we moved the discussion on policy 8800 forward to a later agenda for a couple of reasons. One, we acknowledged in our last meeting that Rex was busily getting the entire school district ready, and that we did not want to put pressure on him to gather the information that we were seeking while that was a priority. And then the other thing is that we were going to touch base with Neola, and we are in transition right now with our Neola rep. And so we are just going to move this forward. It will come back on a later agenda. Sorry, it was the religious and patriotic ceremonies and observances. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the top of our agenda from earlier tonight. So we had 3 different items that we were talking about regarding Title IX. So the first is, Steve sent it to us back in July. You might remember there was on a letterhead from Troon, there was a document about some a court case actually that happened in Kansas related to the Title IX changes. So there were Title IX changes that were offered to be implemented in August of 2024, but there was a court case in Kansas basically disagreeing with portions of the Title IX language, and the court sided with the complainants and said that the use of or including sexual orientation and gender identity that was added to the 2024 update, they sided with them that it should that there was not going to be enforcement under Title IX. And so what happened, basically, this happened in Kansas, but the U.S. Department of Ed, those who, I guess it's kind of confusing. I'm just going to say, so basically what happened was it happened in Kansas, but there were states that came along and said that they wanted to be a part of this. So Alaska, Utah, and Wyoming were also included. And then there were some groups, which I've never heard of this happening before, but there were some specific groups, Young America's Foundation or Female Athletics United, or any school in which a child of Moms for Liberty attends. So basically these organizations had to file with the court that that they wanted an exemption for their school. So in Michigan, there were 9 schools that someone in their community who had a child who attended that school filed for that exemption. And Saline Middle School was one of those schools. So that just complicates things a little bit because the 2024 updates to Title IX are legal updates. So in order to be compliant with the law, we need to follow the 2024 updates. Yet the court deemed that those states and those particular groups who filed for exemption would have that exemption. Now the U.S. Department of Ed has filed an appeal, but that has not been decided yet, or has not been brought back to the court yet. So it puts us in just basically what you need to know is that we need to be compliant with the 2024 laws. So we're moving forward with presenting you with the updates for 2024 with kind of almost an asterisk that the 2020 laws would be followed for any complaint that happened at Saline Middle School. Did you follow that? So Steve sent that Troon, it was on Troon letterhead. If you don't have that anymore, I can send that to you. But he had sent that to us back in July when the court case was decided. And to my knowledge, as of today, it has not been, that the appeal from the U.S. Department of Ed has not been reviewed yet by the court. So for this update, we have the committee tonight decided to move forward with the update from Neola, except where Neola says only. So let me just read to you. Neola wanted us to include at the top of this update, this is policy 2266. Effective August 1st, 2024, this policy shall pertain to reports or formal complaints of sexual harassment that are based on conduct alleged to have occurred on or before July 31st, 2024. So the policy, so basically, if something happened before July 31st, 2024, we would follow policy 2266, except at the middle school. So the caveat now is that there's an asterisk that said that the middle school has a different following. Does that make sense? So you'll see that language coming through. So we've added an asterisk because the language from Neola just said to move forward. And because we're on that list, we felt it important to denote that the middle school will follow a different code. Oh, okay. So we'll come back. We'll come back to that in just a second. I'm going to just go through all the Title IX and then come back in just a second. So the other piece that we discussed tonight, and Carol is actually our Title IX coordinator now because of Mrs. Melcher's retirement. So Carol Diglio, our HR assistant superintendent, is now our Title IX coordinator and has been working on training the staff. Many of our administrators and staff who implement Title IX have already begun to attend training based on the updates that came into law August 1st, 2024. So many are attending, and the training that they're attending, which has been thorough and is clear and easily accessible, has been through Troon, who is our legal, that's who we have as one of our legal, who we've hired as legal representation for the district. So Troon has developed a policy. They have also developed accompanying training that is, again, like I said, easily accessible. And finally, they have also created, in compliance with the new changes in the law and with Title IX, forms that can be used by our school district to implement Title IX in the event that it's needed. So tonight, Carol explained all of that to us, and we decided, Assistant Superintendent Diglio, explained all of that to us, and so we made the determination to bring the Troon policy to a discussion in the upcoming months or weeks. And then lastly, in terms of Title IX, it was also shared with us that over the last several years, there have been some changes to the language that we use, mostly non-discrimination language, but also kind of anti-harassment they kind of blend together often, but specifically non-discrimination language. As we have updated policies over the last several years and the website and some of our contracts, as we've come across them, we've updated them, but then Carol and Betty have gone through and found that there are a number that have not been updated, and it's important to us and to the district that those be updated. So they're doing a thorough search of policy, of websites, of contracts, anything that we use that is governing our district, to make sure that it is in alignment with our non-discrimination and equal opportunity language. So coming soon to a consent agenda near you, you will see that the old language has been taken out and the new language has been inserted into many of those policies or documents. It's not going to be, I guess I said coming soon. It might not be soon. It's going to be ongoing, so it might take a few months for that to happen, but that is something that they're actively working on and shared with us let me see, right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items that they found so far that need to be documented and updated. Okay, so that's the Title IX piece. So I'm going to ask Susan for her question or comment to the committee, and then I'll proceed with the rest of the report.
So now I had comments, but I really have questions about that, about the actual language. I don't know if you can do that real quick while it's in my head, but like the actual language, and are we talking about changing the language? So I'll say I've been talking about this for over 6 years before I even got on the board, knowing that there was language, for example, on the main website, the HR, that there wasn't consistent language, and I have brought that up many times, and it was like we needed to discuss it at the table, but it doesn't need to be, right?
So, well, what we determined at our meeting tonight is that we would like for them to continue the work that they've started to find those areas where it doesn't match the most current policies, which include language like from Elliott Larson. So here's just one example. It says the Board of Education does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, age, religion, height, weight, marital or family status, military status, ancestry, genetic information, and or other legally protected any other legally protected category, collectively protective classes in its own programs and activities, including employment opportunities. And that's from Policy 3122. So some of them have been updated as we've come across them for a variety of reasons, whether someone from the board has brought them forward or Neola has brought them forward. But then there are some, like you mentioned, the website has recently been updated, but like, for example, our contracts have not been. So there is a need for that, and I'm super thankful that Assistant Superintendent Diglio and our lovely and wonderful and always working hard Secretary Betty Yonke has agreed to take that on and look for those areas for us. And what we determined tonight at our meeting is that we feel like that can be handled in a consent agenda because that's language that we've already agreed on, but it needs to come through consent so that it's noted that it changed on that date.
Okay. I want to, so for example, this was a policy we approved, but it had reference to a policy as our non-discrimination policy, and when I went, and I haven't brought it to the committee, that actually wasn't the non-discrimination policy. It was specifically based on sexual harassment. Okay. It was in the 1000s. I know Stedman brought that up, but it's, so I mean, I guess being careful in what's specifically like the Title IX language versus like, you know, for employment overall state language, right? So yeah, and I know you all will be careful with that, but.
They already noted that like the anti-harassment language is different than the anti-discrimination language. They're being careful about distinguishing between the two, although sometimes the non-discrimination language needs to be included in the anti-harassment language. So there is like, for example, in the anti-harassment policy, there is more language than just the anti-discrimination language, if that makes sense.
And the community ed is way off, and I cringe every time I see it. But it adds like political viewpoint or something in it. So, and that comes out like mailed to everybody. So that's one, just to throw that on your radar. But it's I don't know where it came from. But I'm glad that's being done. So I had a question about, so the Moms for Liberty, Title IX, there's a parent who has a child, or multiple parents, in the middle school. Therefore, consistent with that law, we implement 2020. I do want to say the 2020 rules, and so let's just, be explicit that this is about being inclusive and addressing harassment issues and discrimination based on transgender status, gender identity, and expression. But fortunately, our current policy does define sex as sexual orientation and gender identity. So that's, so in a way, like, that nothing is going to change in the sense of focusing on those identities, because that's really a piece when you're talking about the Moms for Liberty and the cases that are out there in the courts, is specifically about that. Unfortunately, it's impacting where there's expansion on, it's really more descriptive, I think, with the 2024, and it's now going to not allow the language with students who are pregnant, and that's just kind of a wider component. But
we did ask, and Carol graciously agreed to take the documentation from Troon specifically, because it is kind of difficult to find. Lauren, Dr. Gold, Gold, did a deep dive to try to find a non-discriminant, like an a resource that didn't have any kind of affiliation that could potentially create bias in determining the differences between the 2020 and 2024 laws, Title IX laws. And so Carol, Assistant Superintendent Diglio, sorry, I'm being very, very informal, but did agree graciously to take the training from Troon and create a document so that all of us here at the table, prior to deciding on that, on those laws, can see, or on those policies, sorry, can see the distinction between the two. Because it is, like you were saying, there's now language around pregnancy. So there is some distinction. The other interesting thing about this, well, first of all, it's interesting. It happened in July 2024. So we were also trying to think about how long it typically takes the courts to respond to a request, an opposition from the U.S. Department of Ed. And so we don't know. It could be any time. It could be another court takes it up. And so we grappled with this because currently it's a law. So we wanted to create a distinction that that allowed us to not be in a legal bind one way or another. So that's kind of where we were right now, that because someone who has a child attended the middle school at the time of the filing, and has an affiliation with one of the groups, it could be Moms for Liberty. There were three, I think, different.
No, it was specifically Moms for Liberty.
Moms for Liberty.
For our school.
For our school, yeah. So anyways, but it also doesn't mean that they still attend. It could be somebody who attended, who was had an 8th grader who now goes to the high school, but it's specifically named Saline Middle School. And you can look at the list. There's
Do you know there's a second list that doesn't include Saline Middle School?
We were waiting for an updated list from Troon, and I checked for a week
Okay.
and it never came about. So I haven't seen the list yet.
Yeah, I love Title IX.
Yeah. Well, if Troon does come back to us with further information, we could reconvene and make a different recommendation. Because bottom line, as a board, it's our obligation to be in compliance with current law. So that's kind of where we felt like this sticking point that, and Lauren even asked, she said, well, if it's legally binding, if there's a law, then why do we have to have a policy about it? And the reason why we need to have a policy about Title IX is because Title IX is something that schools encounter and deal with every day almost. And so we need to have administrative guidelines and training around that so that we know how to be proactive, but also then how to respond when there is, an issue around Title IX.
Yeah. So I just, our current policy and federally they do, and under our trans students policy and non-binary students policy, they are protected, they are covered regardless of the changes. So I think that's important because there is, what it is about, right? So,
exactly,
and then
yeah.
Elliott Larson also protects,
Yes.
not in a Title IX way, but because
In
we
an
do have that
identity, yeah.
language, Elliott Larson still protects our trans and non-binary students against harassment. So I just think that's important while we're going through
Yeah,
this.
no, I'm glad you raised that.
Yeah. So.
I think it's important. I'm thankful that you raised that because I think it's important for students and families to hear that. Yeah, that and that's I think one of the reasons why we grappled with it. We want to be compliant with the law so that we don't get into a situation, but we also want our students and families to recognize that this doesn't diminish the work that we've done and their value. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So that is the Title IX kind of update. So you'll be seeing a couple of things coming forward soon. We also recognize that the September agenda is already very full, the first September agenda, so it might not be coming through until later in September. So that's the Title IX update. We talked about the religious and patriotic ceremonies and observances being moved. And then lastly, we just briefly, because of time, got into a discussion around some proposed modifications to the DEIAC policy language. That's policy 9141. And President McVeigh had submitted some recommendations and he rescinded those and made these new recommendations. So the only piece that we were able to really discuss tonight was the idea around, there's a couple of things that just are raising some concern around OMA and how we operate, how the DEIAC operates. We know that this policy was fashioned after some of our other policies, or some of our other, advisory committees, such as the CIAB. And so we know that there is historic precedent around how the language was written. However, we wondered if there might need to be just some clarification. And so when we were having this brief discussion, we only had about 10 minutes. The conclusion of that discussion was that we are not making any recommendations at this point, but we are going to contact Brad Banasic, who is from the Michigan Association of School Boards and often conveys his understanding of Open Meetings Act as it pertains to school boards. And since we already pay for MASB and there wouldn't be an extra legal retainer fee, we thought we'd start there first. So we're going to seek some clarification from Brad, and this will be on the agenda for the September 24th Policy Committee meeting. And so no decision yet to come to the table, but it is something that we're working on. There is a bit of, I will just acknowledge that there is a bit of a time crunch in regards to at least the OMA response or interpretation from Brad, because we do have, on a committee of 20, we currently have vacancies of 8 on the DEIAC because of the way membership rolls over and those members returning for fall. And because the work that is done on the DEIAC is often done in committee, that leaves some committees either, with few or none. And so we don't want to hold up the work that they do in terms of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so there is a bit of a sense of urgency. So even if the policy doesn't change, just having that insight ahead of the selection of the committee members, of the new committee members, will be helpful in just upholding our current policy, even aside from these changes, if that makes sense. So just having clarification there can help us to make sure that we are following that law.
Well, thank you for that report. But I do want to say that as the person who made those many slight adjustments to the policy, I'm fine to expedite things to pull that out. You don't need to ask me or anything. You could plow ahead and do it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're going to do it anyway. That's great. Okay. You know what I mean. Y'all.
I have Oh, yeah, sorry. So I think I mentioned when developing the policy, and Michael, I believe, was on, President McVeigh was on the committee at that time, we had gotten a couple of legal written opinions about, one of them was having 3 board members versus 2, and making sure that was okay, and keeping it, that it was still compliant with OMA, that we didn't have to have an open meeting if we had 3 board members there. And then, and that's why we didn't number how many we had at that time. And then there was, it'll be helpful. I don't know if you pulled it yet, but that legal opinion, I don't know if it got sent to the full board that year. And then also Brad Basnick with LMASB, any board member has access to Brad with our membership, just to let you all know that if you ever have any questions from him. But he had sent me an article at the time that he had drafted, because this question had come up, and so maybe that will, it was probably, I could either find a print one or just send the draft to you all, but it's kind of the same thing, like his interpretation of advisory committees not having to be public because of the decision making. So, and especially with the DEIAC, there's actually less recommendations and action that we actually take with that versus the other advisory committees. But yeah, I don't want us to hold that up because of policy, but yeah, I mean, I'll send that, but does it address specifically, the choosing of going through applications and stuff? Yeah, that's definitely a question. And I would say that with CAB and wellness, which we've never ever had to do, have like an open, looking at applications and stuff. So, all right.
Thank you, Trustee Eastup. If you would send that to us, that'd be great.
Yep.
Just for background reading. Thank you. We are now at the part. Thank you very much. That was a.
It was lengthy, but it's also it's thick stuff, I think. So.
Well, it is, and it's timely, and it absolutely had to be addressed earlier than now, but we couldn't. Thank you. So we're now at the administration board updates. Dr. Lotch isn't here. I have no update, so I can start from one end or the other. And students, you're welcome to pitch in as well. What we usually do at this point is give a little talk about what we've been up to, what kind of board business we've been working on, things we've been doing in the community, and things we want to highlight to anyone who happens to be watching the stream. So you can hold off and wait until the end. I'll start at the other end with Trustee Gold.
I'm going to be brief and just welcome everyone back to school and thank the teachers who I know have been putting in a lot of time getting classrooms ready, and thank the teachers who've been flexible about moving and taking on new duties as we try to match things up as well as we can, and thank all the staff and faculty and faculty, all the staff and administrators. Everybody's working really hard this week, I know, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will echo those comments and thank people again, for their patience as we're working through things with construction updates and all of those kinds of things. But I do think those opportunities are exciting for our students and our staff. So, and welcome back. I am excited to be back with students and to somewhat. I probably feel like the students do, like, setting your alarm is tough, right? Having to do all those kinds of things. But at the same time, it's what we do for a living, and it's good to be back in the classroom and back in the swing of things. And then the second thing I will say, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, is I want to give a shout out to Michael McVeigh, our president. On the 14th, he was awarded the MASB's President's Award, and I just happened to have the ability to be there to support him. And I thought it was incredible to see how he was recognized for the commitment he makes to being the best he can at this job. So thank you I'm glad that you received that recognition. I was happy to be there. So.
Well, that's what you get when you take 29 classes over 8 years or so. Thank you. You got time, maybe?
No.
Let's see. All right. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Just to jump ahead, I just want to thank you for coming to that. I appreciate it.
Welcome back, Hornets. Of course, I was able to join Stephen, Michael, and the rest of the faculty. Now I'm saying faculty too, because I'm used to it. Staff at the opening of school last Wednesday. It was an incredibly energizing experience. It was just great catching up with everyone and having a cup of coffee, and then seeing some really wonderful presentations. I believe that the staff felt very valued in what they were hearing. I had some good comments, so I appreciate all of the presentations. Steve, also, I wanted to thank him. He did specifically address those staff members that moved buildings as we look at our finances, and acknowledge that that is not always the easiest thing, and thank them for that. So I appreciated that. And Carol, I really loved your video on being Mr. Jensen. I don't know if you know this, but we used to have a Jensen school. It's where Pleasant Ridge is. There's a plaque still in the media center. Google it. It has like over 3 million views. I went back and watched it again. I really liked it. And it was, I don't want to spoiler alert, but it's about a little boy who had some behaviors in the classroom, and those behaviors were looked at from a negative perspective from some classmates and from some other staff. But there was a teacher, and his name was Mr. Jensen, and he saw that young boy in a different way, and he ended up going on to some pretty great things. And I think that our staff always looks at students as individuals and always looks for their best traits and their passions and talents. So I thought that that was really great. All of our games and activities are back in motion. So please support our actors and our musicians and our athletes and our artists and things like that. There's some really great stuff coming up, and it's already going on. So welcome back.
Even on the first day of school, I was watching the cross-country runners working their way around town and being very jealous of their abilities. Anyway, we'll just work our way along. It really, on the opening day, I got a chance to welcome the staff again, and I heard some really good things last year about my brief talk, and I tried to top it. I couldn't quite top it, but it really was, if anyone cares, it was an incredible honor to welcome back staff at all levels, at all areas where they're function in the school district. And it was wonderful to see the faces. So they're going to have a great year. We're going to have a great year, and we're moving on. I'll pass this over to Secretary Miller.
So this was a different fall for us at the Miller household. This is the first fall in 23 years that we haven't had somebody in a building in Saline area schools. So for families like us who have kids who are now navigating college and career and all of those things. It feels a little different to be on this side. So I feel a little disconnected, although still trying to stay connected and through the community, the work that is connected to the community. So that's been really interesting and exciting. I was sad to miss the opening day because I was normally I'm at opening day for my own school, but this year moving a child into college. So busy times. Other than that, looking forward to just some of our committee work kicking off again this fall, and attending superintendent evaluation tool training with Brad on October 1st. Betty just registered us, so we'll be in compliance with that. So that's all. Welcome back to all of our Hornets.
Trustee Eastup?
Yes, so I have just a couple of updates. So the Sex Ed Advisory Board, SEAB or SEAB, is holding their second hearing here Tuesday, September 10th at our next board meeting. So that will be the second public hearing. There was one done earlier this year, and there will be an opportunity, I hope this information goes out to the public, to view the curriculum. I believe that is, I don't know if it's going to be here at the main office or with the, it looks like our community, our director of communications has that information, and we'll be getting that out soon. So just seeing the head shaking. So yeah, September 10th, you'll find out more information about how to view that. If you wish to view the curriculum that they will hopefully be recommending to us in the future. And then also, happy first day of classes. I have a kindergartner, so it was super exciting. Well, the first day of class was 40 minutes. So I got to, take her home. It wasn't really an extra break or anything, but she really enjoyed it, and it was nice to see all the little kids and the nervous parents, and so it's been really good. So welcome back, everyone. And then we have the Saline Community Fair this week, and that's going to be August 28th, which starts tomorrow, through September 1st. So August 28th, tomorrow, is the Saline Schools Day. And also part of that, there will be an inclusion day with like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So it'll be free admission until 2. Admission help includes an helper. So this is free rides at reduced speed for our special needs friends. And so I think that's a really great opportunity for our families who have children, and special education, have special needs and need those accommodations. So that's pretty exciting. And I think there's oh my goodness, Olympics, Ag Olympics, where you will see some of our staff there, and so that should be fun and entertaining. But yeah, I think that's all I have, and hope to see you all out there.
I'll be there. Trustee Austin?
Okay, just a few things. Some already been touched on. The back to school, welcome all the students and staff back to school. With the construction going on, new bus routes and new drivers in, I just want to make sure that parents and stuff are sending or giving a little bit of grace, I guess, maybe at first here, getting into school, and they've been working on it, and so there might be a few hiccups, but we'll get through it. The other thing is the HR report. Once again, I saw a staff member, Carol Melcher, retiring. I wish her well. She has done just a tremendous job for the district over the years, and has made a huge impact on many students, and I just want to give her a shout out. last part is maybe more of a public service announcement. And I guess we are in a election cycle in a divisive world. So I think it is just important that our district maintains neutrality in the classrooms. And as far as the adults in the community, I mean, it's tough running for even as small of a seat as the school board. And I think it's just important that our adults in the community be the example on social media that we want to see in our schools. Less bullying, be inclusive of differing thoughts and ideas, just be a good example. So that's all.
Thank you, Tim. Hey, students, do you got anything to add to our opening comments?
I don't think either of us do, but I just want to say thank you to all the teachers for being prepared. I had a friend who went in on the first day to get his schedule changed, and he was in the right class the second day, and it's just really impressive, so thank you.
That's awesome. It doesn't always happen, that's for sure. Kate, anything? No? Yes? That's fine. It's okay not to speak too, which is great. I'd like to, the consent agenda listed in this agenda will not be read aloud. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all listed items without discussion unless a member of the board requests that any one or all be considered individually. Do I have a motion to authorize a consent agenda as printed?
Motion, Miller.
Miller.
Second.
Austin, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great, 7-0. Opposed? Great, 7-0. Thank you very much. Item scheduled on the next agenda, as Trustee Eastep noted, the SEAB, not SEAB, second hearing will be held, and we would like to try for a photo op with Steve next time, just somewhere, and I play with it digitally, and we do things with it. It's in a polite way. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Public comment, is there any public comment? Thank you very much. The next meeting will be held on September 10th, 6:30. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the August 27th meeting at 8:21.
So moved.
Second.
I got
Okay,
two
there you go.
Jennies.
So moved, Stebbin.
Second, Eastep.
Stebbin and Eastep, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm still waiting for that one person to be opposed to adjourning the meeting. It could happen someday. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good for you. All right. Thank you. Good night. I already took the perfect picture, Jackie. Sorry. They're holding their name tags and